So what do you see when you look at this picture? The title of this picture, I love it. It's called My Wife and Mother-in-Law. Can you see the two women? Which did you see first? Or more accurately, for today's purposes, which did you perceive first, and with what lens did you use? Well, here are some AI-generated possibilities for the way you may have perceived this picture. There's something called age-related bias. So a study from Flinders University in Australia says that a person's age can influence the way we see images. And those between 18 and 30 tended to see the young woman first. And those over 30 saw the elderly woman first. Now, I'm not going to ask you if that's true, but that might be true. And then there's something called top-down processing. So, top-down processing is where our brain uses existing information and expectations and past experiences to interpret and construct what we see. And I know Kurt is going to talk more about that later. And then there are expectations and stereotypes. So a person's preconceived notions heavily influence how we perceive something. Negative stereotypes from the media or cultural biases can lead to a negative expectation or perception, which may then affect our willingness to see something that's right in front of our eyes. I used to teach a sophomore class called Speech Communication, and this course was a requirement for graduation, so every sophomore had to take it, and it had two components to it. One, providing students an opportunity to stand up in front of their peers and give a speech, and the other was to talk about the communication process and to teach students about the communication process. And one of the units in that course was called perception. So to kick the unit off, I would occasionally stage an argument with a student before class started while the other students were coming into the class. It would start out quiet, there'd be a little interaction, and then it would escalate, and the argument would end by our voices yelling at each other. The student would yell something and storm out the door and slam it. So fun. Once the bell rang, I would say to the students, please take out a piece of paper and write what you just saw. For some, I started the argument. For others, the student was to blame. And for some, the details were occasionally made up a story that had very little to do with anything that had happened in the classroom. But the details were remembered differently depending on where in the room a student sat, how long they had actually been in the room, their feelings about me, or their feelings about this particular student who I had had the argument with. The student I argued with would come back in once the writing was done. And then the rest of the class realized that the argument had been staged. So fun. So this beginning to the unit exercise, this opened the door to a discussion about why we perceive things the way we do and why we need to be careful about how we form perceptions about what is true. And Kurt's going to talk about that today too. Our perceptions are influenced by our physiology and our psychology, our senses, our age, our general health, as well as our mood and past experience. All of those things come together to help us make sense of our world. Have you ever noticed that when you get a new car, you suddenly see it everywhere you go? You'd never seen that car before, and now you're driving a new car, and doggone it, so is everybody else. I know I had that experience with cell towers. After someone showed me one and told me what it was, I started seeing them everywhere. But I hadn't even noticed them before because they weren't within my experience, my knowledge, or my perception. Here's another picture to ponder. What do you see? Do you see a rabbit? Do you see a duck? How about this one? Do you see a vase? Or do you see two faces? Did everybody in here see the same thing in those two pictures? Everybody saw a duck, right? The first time they looked at it. No? Everybody see two faces the first time you looked at that? No. Huh. When we understand that our truth is not always universal, and we accept that the lens we use may not bring the same clear insight to everybody, then we begin to live with open minds, open hands, and open hearts. Welcome to worship. We are so glad you're here.